Gather round, friends, closer to the fire. The night grows deep out here in these California hills, and the shadows, well, they got stories of their own to tell. You hear that rustling in the leaves? Could be just the wind, or could be something else. Tonight, I've got a few tales for you, whispers from the darker corners of this glittering land of dreams. We'll start with a place you've all seen, a beacon on the hills, but one that carries a chilling whisper on the breeze. The Hollywood sign. They say those big white letters, stark against the mountainside, they've seen things, heard things, felt things. More than just the changing seasons and the endless parade of hopeful eyes gazing up at them. You see that H way over there, the first one? That's where the sadness clings thickest, they say. Back in the dust and dreams of old Hollywood, 1932 it was. A young woman named Peg Entwistle came to this town with stars in her eyes. Beautiful, talented, or so she hoped. She landed a part in a play, but the bright lights she'd imagined flickered and died out quick. The play closed after just one performance. Can you imagine? All your hopes, all your dreams crashing down like that? Well, Peg, she couldn't bear it. One lonely night, she climbed all the way up that rugged Mount Lee, past the scrub and the silent stones, until she reached that towering H, and there she ended her young life, leaping into the darkness below. Now some folks, they say her spirit never left that hillside. They say on foggy nights, when the mist curls around those letters like ghostly fingers, you can still see her. A fleeting shadow near the H, a whisper of despair on the wind. Some hikers have even claimed to smell the faint scent of gardenias, her favorite flower, just before a cold spot chills them to the bone. But that's not the only darkness clinging to that sign. Oh no. Some say it's not just Peg's sorrow, but a more general curse that hangs over all who reach too high in this town of make-believe. You see it happen, don't you? Bright young things, shooting stars that blaze across the sky and then fade, crash and burn. They reach for the Hollywood dream, stand for a moment bathed in its golden light, only to be swallowed by the shadows soon after. Some whisper it's the land itself, ancient and restless. Others say it's the price you pay for selling your soul to the dream factory. Whatever it is, there's a weight to that hillside, a silent testament to broken promises and shattered illusions. I remember a story not too long ago about a young actor. He just landed his big break, a starring role in a picture everyone said was going to be huge. He threw a party up in the hills, overlooking the city, the Hollywood sign twinkling in the distance like a promise. He was on top of the world that night, laughing, boasting about his future. A few months later, the movie flopped. He couldn't get another decent role. The calls stopped coming. The sparkle in his eyes, it just vanished. Last I heard, he'd left town, chasing a different kind of dream, far away from the glare of those white letters. It makes you wonder, doesn't it? All that ambition, all that striving, all those hopes pinned on a few square miles of make-believe. Maybe that sign up there isn't just a landmark. Maybe it's a warning, a reminder that the higher you climb, the further you have to fall. And sometimes there's a price you can't even imagine paying. The fire's crackling low now, casting long, dancing shadows. That story, it always leaves a bit of a chill in the air, doesn't it? But don't you worry, friends. The night is young, and the darkness holds more secrets. Are you ready for another tale? One that sails on the restless waters of the Pacific, a place where the past still walks the decks? All right, gather closer, friends. Let the embers warm your faces against the creeping night. We've looked to the hills and seen the shadows clinging to the land of dreams. Now let's turn our gaze towards the water, towards the long, dark shape that rests in the harbor down in Long Beach. The grand old Queen Mary. She's a majestic sight, isn't she? A relic of a bygone era, a floating palace that once ferried the rich and famous across the vast ocean. But beneath that elegant exterior, beneath the polished wood and gleaming brass, lie whispers of another kind of journey. One that never ended. They say the Queen Mary is more than just a hotel. She's a vessel still carrying her spectral passengers, their stories etched into her very steel bones. You can almost feel it as you walk her decks, a certain heaviness in the air, a sense of echoes lingering in the long corridors. They say hundreds of souls met their end during her years at sea, both as a luxury liner and as a troop ship during the Second World War. Accidents, illness, the brutal realities of wartime, a lot of life and a lot of death unfolded within her walls. And some of it seems to have stayed behind. Take the engine room, deep in the belly of the ship, a labyrinth of pipes and machinery, hot and noisy even in stillness. They say a young engineer was crushed to death down there during a routine drill. Some visitors and crew members have reported hearing the clang of metal, the echo of a man's scream, even feeling a cold, unseen presence brushing past them in those dimly lit depths. They call him Stoker, forever bound to the iron heart of his beloved ship. Then there's the old swimming pool, a beautiful Art Deco space now eerily silent. The story goes that a young girl drowned there. They say you can still hear the splash of water when no one is around, the faint giggling of a child echoing in the empty tiles. Some have even seen a small wet footprint appear and disappear on the deck beside the drained pool. Imagine that, a ghostly reminder of a life cut short, still playing in a place of forgotten joy. And then there's the lady in white. Ah, she's a classic, a spectral figure said to glide through the first-class lounges and along the promenade decks. Elegant, sorrowful, her identity shrouded in mystery. Some say she was a passenger who lost her love at sea, forever searching for him in the familiar surroundings of the ship. Others believe she was a bride who never made it to her wedding, her heartbroken spirit forever wandering the decks she was meant to grace. I remember hearing a tale from one of the hotel staff, a young woman who worked the night shift. She was making her rounds on one of the upper decks when she saw her, a figure in a flowing white gown just at the edge of her vision. When she turned to look directly, the figure vanished, leaving only a sudden chill in the air and the faint scent of salt and sea. She swore she wasn't dreaming, said the sadness radiating from the apparition was almost palpable. It's not just visual sightings, you know? People report all sorts of strange happenings on the Queen Mary. Doors opening and closing on their own, lights flickering inexplicably, disembodied voices whispering in empty rooms. Some have felt unseen hands touching them, or the distinct sensation of being watched when they're completely alone. There's even a particular cabin, B340, that gained such a reputation for paranormal activity that it was sealed off for years. Guests reported terrifying experiences within its walls, the bed shaking violently, the lights turning on and off, disembodied knocking, and even the feeling of being physically attacked. It's been reopened now for the brave or the foolish. I wouldn't spend a night in there for all the tea in China. The Queen Mary, she's a grand old dame, full of history and stories. But some of those stories, they linger in the shadows, in the quiet corners, in the cold spots that have no earthly explanation. She's a reminder that even the most beautiful things can carry a weight of sorrow. A collection of unfinished journeys and lingering spirits. The fire's settled into a comfortable glow now, painting the trees in shades of orange and black. The wind seems to have picked up a bit, carrying whispers through the leaves. That tale of the Queen Mary, it always makes me think about all the lives that have crossed our paths and where they might be now. Ready for a story a little closer to the land? A tale of something a bit more unnatural? Something they say lurks not in the grand halls of a ship, but under the cold, unforgiving concrete of a bridge. All right, friends. Let the crackling fire keep the real shadows at bay. We've heard whispers from the Hollywood Hills and felt the chill of the ocean liner. Now let's talk about something a little more primal. Something that crawls out of the darkness, not of sorrow or the sea, but of something altogether more wrong. Tonight, we delve into the legend of the Bunnyman. Now, you might have heard tales of a Bunnyman from other parts of the country, whispers of a figure in a white suit with long ears, lurking near bridges, sometimes with an axe. Well, California has its own share of these unsettling stories, And while the details might shift like shadows in the moonlight, the core of the fear remains the same. Down here in Southern California, these stories often cling to the older bridges, the ones that arch over forgotten creeks and lonely stretches of road, far from the bright lights of the cities. Places where the silence can swallow you whole, and the only company you have are the rustling leaves and the hooting owls. One of the places they talk about is the La Loma Bridge out in Colton. It's an old iron bridge, the kind that groans a little when cars pass over it, especially late at night. The local folks around there, they've got their stories. They say back in the 70s, maybe even earlier, there were whispers of a strange figure seen around that bridge, particularly around Halloween. Not just some prankster in a cheap costume, mind you. This was something else. Something unsettling in the way it moved, the way it seemed to appear and disappear into the darkness. And the suit, it wasn't some fluffy bunny outfit. It was described as ragged, stained, almost like it was made of something, skin. And sometimes, just sometimes, they said he carried an axe. The stories varied, of course. Some said he just stood there, under the bridge, watching cars pass with hollow black eyes. Others claimed he'd chase after vehicles, the axe glinting in the headlights. There were even whispers of attacks, of near misses, of people speeding away in terror, catching only a glimpse of a white rabbit-like figure disappearing into the brush. One old-timer I met down that way, he swore he saw the Bunnyman himself back in his younger days. He was driving home late one October night, the moon hanging low and fat in the sky. As he crossed the La Loma Bridge, his headlights caught something in the middle of the road. He said it was tall, unnaturally so, and it was wearing something white and furry. It turned its head, and even in the dim light he could see the dark holes where its eyes should have been. It just stood there, swaying slightly, and then, quick as a blink, it was gone. Vanished into the shadows like it was never there at all. He never drove that way again after dark. Now, whether it was just local folklore getting twisted and retold, or if there was something more to it, well, that's the part that makes the hairs on the back of your neck stand up, isn't it? The idea that out there, in the lonely places, something other might be lurking. Something that doesn't quite belong in the world of the living. And it wasn't just Colton. You'd hear similar whispers in other rural parts of Southern California, around other old bridges that crossed forgotten streams. Each place had its own spin on the tale, a slightly different description of the suit, a different reason for the creature's unsettling presence. Some said it was an escaped lunatic, forever trapped in his delusion. Others whispered of something older, something tied to the land itself, a trickster spirit taking a disturbing form. The thing about these stories is how they tap into a primal fear. The fear of the unknown, the fear of being hunted, the fear of something familiar. Like a harmless bunny, twisted into something menacing and grotesque. It makes you think twice about that shadow in the trees, that rustle in the undergrowth. The fire's burning down to embers now, casting eerie shapes against the surrounding woods. The air has grown colder, hasn't it? That story of the Bunnyman, it always leaves me feeling a little jumpy. Makes you want to keep an eye on the edge of the firelight, doesn't it? But don't fret too much, friends. We've braved the land and the sea. Now, are you ready to hear a tale of a different kind of haunting? A story of a darkness that clings to a specific soul. A tragic figure whose ghost is said to still walk the shadowed streets of old Hollywood? Huddle closer, friends. The night deepens, and the air grows heavy with the secrets this land holds. We've spoken of cursed signs, haunted ships, and creatures that lurk beneath bridges. Now we turn to a different kind of ghost. A specter born not of accident or malice in some forgotten place, but from a tragedy that shocked a city and remains shrouded in mystery to this very day. The ghost of the Black Dahlia. The year was 1947. Post-war Los Angeles, a city still basking in the glow of its burgeoning dreams, was suddenly gripped by a nightmare. The body of a young woman, Elizabeth Short, was found brutally murdered in a vacant lot in Leimert Park. Her beauty, Her dreams of Hollywood stardom and the horrific nature of her death turned her into an instant, tragic icon. The press dubbed her the Black Dahlia, a name that still sends shivers down the spines of those who remember, or who have heard the chilling details of her fate. Elizabeth, or Beth as she was known, had come to Hollywood with stars in her eyes, just like so many others. She drifted, working odd jobs, her dreams of making it big slowly fading. Her life was a series of fleeting connections, of hopes raised and dashed, and then her life was brutally, inexplicably cut short. They never found her killer. The case remains one of Hollywood's most infamous unsolved mysteries, a dark stain on the city's glittering facade. But some say that Beth's spirit, restless and seeking justice, still lingers in the places she knew in life, and in the place where her dreams ended so violently. One of the places they talk about is the Leimert Park neighborhood itself. Some residents have reported seeing a shadowy figure, a woman with dark hair, moving silently through the streets late at night. Others have described a feeling of profound sadness, a wave of coldness washing over them in certain spots, as if an unseen sorrow still permeates the air. There are whispers, too, around old Hollywood, places she frequented, the faded glamour of old movie theaters and forgotten diners. Some say they've seen a young woman, dressed in what looks like 1940s clothing, her face pale and indistinct, standing at bus stops or near the entrances of old studios. She's often described as looking lost, confused, as if still searching for something she never found. One story I heard from a security guard who worked at a now demolished studio near Hollywood Boulevard sent a real chill down my spine. He said late one night, during a routine patrol, he saw a woman standing just outside the old soundstage. It was raining that night, a cold, relentless drizzle, but she didn't seem to notice. She was dressed in a dark dress, and her hair was wet and plastered to her face. He called out to her, asking if she needed help, but she didn't respond. As he got closer, he said her form seemed to flicker, like a candle in the wind, and then she was simply gone, vanished into the rainy night without a trace. He never forgot the feeling of profound sorrow that lingered in the air after she disappeared. Another tale speaks of a woman seen near the spot where Beth's body was found. Not a shadowy figure, but a more distinct apparition, a beautiful young woman with dark, haunting eyes. Some say she appears to those who are drawn to the macabre details of her case, as if silently pleading for someone to finally uncover the truth. It's a different kind of haunting than creaking ships or axe-wielding figures, isn't it? It's the lingering echo of a life violently extinguished, a dream shattered, a mystery unsolved. It's the sadness that clings to a place where innocence was lost and justice never served. The fire is now a bed of glowing coals, casting an eerie red light on our faces. The wind whispers through the trees like a mournful sigh. The story of the Black Dahlia. It's a reminder that not all ghosts are malevolent or frightening in a traditional sense. Some are simply the lingering echoes of tragedy, a testament to the darkness that can lurk beneath the bright lights of even the most glamorous of cities. One final story remains for this long night, friends. A story of a place far removed from the glitz and glamour of Hollywood, a place of stark stone and cold iron, an island prison that held some of the most notorious criminals in American history. Are you ready to hear the tales that still cling to the fog-shrouded shores of Alcatraz? All right, my friends, the fire has almost died down to embers, and the night is at its deepest. For our final tale this evening, we journey north, up the coast to the chilly waters of San Francisco Bay. There, shrouded in fog and steeped in history, sits the rock, Alcatraz. That stark island, a fortress of stone and steel, once held some of the most hardened criminals this country has ever known. Men who had committed unspeakable acts, their spirits as cold and unforgiving as the prison walls themselves. And some say, even though the prison has been silent for decades, those spirits never truly left. They're still there, trapped within the decaying cell blocks, their restless energy clinging to the cold, damp air. You can feel it the moment you step onto that island, a sense of isolation, of despair, that seems to seep into your very bones. The wind howls across the bay, carrying with it whispers of the past, echoes of the lives that were confined within those impenetrable walls. They say the cell blocks are the most active. Imagine walking those narrow corridors, the steel bars casting long skeletal shadows in the dim light. Visitors and former guards alike have reported sudden drops in temperature, cold spots that have no earthly explanation. Some have heard disembodied voices, faint whispers that seem to come from the empty cells, sometimes just unintelligible murmurs. Other times, the distinct sound of someone crying out in anguish. One of the most notorious areas is the Hole, the solitary confinement cells in D Block. Imagine being locked away in those dark, cramped spaces, with no light, no human contact, just the crushing weight of your isolation. It's said that the despair in those cells is so thick you can almost touch it. Visitors have reported an overwhelming sense of dread and unease in that area, some even feeling a physical pressure, as if the walls themselves are closing in on them. There's a famous story about a guard who worked in D Block back in the day. He claimed that late one night, while making his rounds, he heard a blood-curdling scream coming from one of the empty Hole cells. He rushed to the cell, his heart pounding in his chest, but when he looked inside, there was no one there. The silence that followed was even more terrifying than the scream itself. He swore he never went near that block alone again. Another tale revolves around the old mess hall. Imagine the cacophony of hundreds of hardened criminals eating in silence, the tension in the air thick enough to cut with a knife. Some visitors have reported the distinct clatter of silverware and the scraping of chairs in the empty hall, especially late in the day when the island grows quiet. Others have smelled phantom aromas of old prison food, a greasy, unpleasant scent that vanishes as quickly as it appears. And then there's the warden's house, perched on the hill overlooking the prison, a grand old building that once housed the head of this formidable institution. Some say the spirits of wardens past still roam its empty rooms, their footsteps echoing on the wooden floors, their presence a silent reminder of the authority they once wielded. Perhaps the most well-known ghostly resident is a former inmate who was brutally murdered in one of the cell blocks. They say his anguished spirit still haunts the area where he died, a shadowy figure sometimes seen lurking in the corners, a palpable sense of anger and injustice clinging to the air. The thing about Alcatraz is its history. It was a place of last resort, a place where hope went to die. So much pain, so much despair, so much violence permeated those walls. It's no wonder that some believe those tormented souls are still trapped there. Their stories etched into the very fabric of the island. The fire is nothing but glowing embers now, casting dancing shadows that play tricks on the eyes. The wind seems to whisper secrets through the trees, secrets carried across the dark waters of the bay. That's the last story for tonight, friends. The ghosts of Alcatraz, a chilling reminder that some prisons hold their inmates long after the doors are closed. The night is deep, and the woods hold their own mysteries. Let's bank these embers and get some rest. Who knows what whispers the dawn might bring? But for now, let the silence of the California night settle around us, and let the echoes of these tales linger in our minds. Sleep well, if you can.
Thanks for joining us in the shadows tonight. If you enjoyed these chilling tales, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more spine-tingling stories every week. Have you got a story of your own? Share it in the comments below. We love hearing from you. And remember, the darkness holds many secrets. Are you brave enough to uncover them? Until next time, keep your lights on and your doors locked. Sweet nightmares.